Hello again. This will be a really short video, lecture, talk, discussion, whatever you want to call it, just about sound and image. Now, I'm going to be looking at two authors here. Both are famous, well-respected authors. One's still alive, one's not. I just want to kind of show you what I mean by sound, and even a little bit about editing. Okay. So I'm going to read these out loud. I just want you to listen to how the language is moving and listen to, or just watch what the author does, or what each author does. Okay. The first is from the author Vladimir Nabokov. Very, very famous, probably most famous for this book, Lolita. His other, probably most famous book would be Pale Fire. I don't really like Pale Fire, but it's kind of funny at points. Interestingly enough, Nabokov is considered one of the great stylists in the English language, even though English was his third language. He was originally Russian, wrote some of his books in Russian, and then translated them into English. Others he just wrote in English, and he was very interested in butterflies, and he was actually a really, really good chess player. He was helped because he was helped by that in being rather wealthy, and that allowed him to really never have a job. So he spent most of his time writing. Very prolific writer, very good writer. Anyway, so this is from his book, Pnin, and I just want to kind of read this sentence to you. It's a single sentence. And just listen to how he's moving the language, okay? Certain repetitions of sound effects, alliteration, consonants, etc., assonance, and then watch how where this sentence ends up. It's a really kind of killer sentence. The accumulation of consecutive rooms in his memory now resembled those displays of grouped elbow chairs on show in beds and lamps in Inglebrooks, which, ignoring all space-time distinction, okay, the typo threw me off. I didn't like that, so I had to change it. Let's do it again. The accumulation of consecutive rooms in his memory now resembled those displays of grouped elbow chairs on show in beds and lamps in Inglebrooks, which, ignoring all space-time distinctions, commingle in the soft light of a furniture store beyond which it snows and the dusk deepens and nobody really loves anybody. It's a really great and haunting sentence because first of all, we have this kind of metaphoric image here, right? The accumulation, his memory, right? All these stories and stuff now resemble. So we have a metaphoric shift here. And he just gives us all of these things, all these things on display in a furniture store, right? So we have this metaphoric image of you're passing by a store window and you just see all this stuff kind of piled on itself on display, kind of distant from, right, the person outside. So he's almost external to his own memory looking in, which, ignoring all space-time distinctions, commingle in the soft light of a furniture store beyond which it snows and the dusk deepens because the sun is going down, right? So it's getting darker. And this is where he really kills it, right? And nobody really loves anybody. So it's this shift from something we can see very clearly to something that is this kind of broad cosmic display of language here. It's really, really nice because you can almost see it as he's writing it, or as you're reading it, almost like a movie. Right, you can just see the camera kind of here. It's look, if we think about the camera as being right here on the window, and then it kind of moves out, right, almost into a panoramic shot where we see the whole of the world almost, right? Or at least this big vision where nobody really loves anybody. It helps to color, excuse me, color the mood of that sentence itself. I've always really loved that sentence, and I like showing people that because I think it's really, really good. This next one is more about sound. Okay, this is from the opening of his book Lolita. I won't go into what the book's about. You can go read it and make your own conclusions. I will say this about the book. It is using irony constantly, okay? Constant use of irony, all right? Because the main character has a love affair with Lolita, and if you go read the book, you'll find out what the irony is, okay? At first, you'll be shocked, and you'll say, oh my God, how's that? That's terrible. Well, go and read the book and look for the irony in it. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul, Lolita, the tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth, Lo-li-ta. Now, I mean, he's just packing sound into these sentences here, okay? It almost becomes abstract by the time you get down here, right? It almost becomes almost this abstraction, like this person, her identity or whatever, broken down into these syllables, right? Almost like deconstructing a word by repeating it so much that it almost loses sense. It almost loses reference, right? If I take, furniture and repeat it over and over and over, it just becomes babbling sound eventually. Furniture, 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 it loses its referent, okay? Because it's losing reference to the thing that it's referring. So it's just a nice little, you can see L, there we have alliteration, L, alliteration, sin, soul, alliteration, S, Lolita, tip of the tongue taking, so you see alliteration, alliteration, alliteration. And he runs this sentence out, right? Doom, 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 and uses those sound effects to push the sentence forward into breaking it further down into its constituent parts. Really, really great book. I'm going to contrast that with a book actually this is the opening to Jonathan Franzen's book, The Corrections. Very famous book. I think it won the National Book Award, I think about 20 years ago. Franzen is often praised for his prose style. I will be very honest with you. I find Franzen's books so boring that I've never finished The Corrections. I really tried, and it bored me so much that I just couldn't do it. So, and this, okay, so I actually copied and pasted this from Microsoft Word. So I'm going to, I had cut out a bunch of stuff here, and this program, the whiteboard program, doesn't seem to like strike-throughs. So I will redo that here in a moment. Okay, so here's the opening of this book. Some of the language is good, but it's a little much. The madness of an autumn cold front moving through. You could feel it. Something terrible was going to happen. The sun low in the sky, a minor light, a cooling star, gust after gust of disorder. Trees restless, temperatures falling, the whole northern region of things coming to an end. No children in the yards here. Shadows lengthened on yellowing zoysia. Red oaks and pin oaks and swamp white oaks rained acorns on houses with no mortgages. Now, if you listen to that, I hope you can hear that this part down here sounds very reminiscent. I don't think he's plagiarizing, but it sounds reminiscent of that sentence we looked at from Nabokov, from Pnin. Okay, but it's to me, it's a little overbearing. right? The language is interesting in places, but it's almost like it's so packed in that we can't move from image to image because there's not much logic between them. Okay, so I think in my original suggestions, I thought we were going to cut this, 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 shadows lengthen. I'm trying to remember what my original kind of suggested edits were. That's what it was. I think I'd inserted the word while. Now, this is something that you can try doing. I'll show you something with poetry later. It's called an erasure. Okay, it's an erasure poem. I'll show you how to do these later. But you can try this with authors, maybe that you don't like, just to kind of see if you can pull something decent out of what they've written. So just listen to this. Let's see if this sounds a little better. The madness of an autumn cold front moving through. The sun low in the sky, a minor light, a cooling star. Trees restless, temperatures falling, the whole northern regions of gust after gust. No children in the yards here. Shadows lengthened while oaks rained acorns on houses with no mortgages. Now, while I like the word zoysia and I like the specificity of red oak, pin oak, swamp oak, it's kind of packing in so many details in the language that it's cluttery to me. And so I think that maybe if you listen to that, just go back to that first paragraph and then read this next one or listen to it. I think it has a little bit more concision. It's a little bit more precise. But what do I know, right? I've never won a National Book Award, right? So these are just my little predilections, right? I have aesthetic choices that I make and like. I have authors that I like. You're going to have authors that you like. If you really like Jonathan Franzen, great. That's awesome. I don't. No big deal. It doesn't hurt my feelings. If you don't like Vladimir Nabokov, that's fine. It doesn't hurt my feelings. Okay. But I just want to kind of point this out that even prose authors are using image, okay, and these sound effects in what they're writing. They're using punctuation to kind of cut up how we read and process and hear the lines as they're being read. So I just want to point this out that this shows up even in prose. Even if you are a prose writer and you think, oh, okay, I only want to write fiction, great. But you still have to read poetry and you still have to pay attention to the sound effects and the rhythms of your sentences in prose, just as you would in poetry. Another thing that's kind of fun to do is to take prose, and this is actually how some poets write. They will write their stuff in prose, and they will go back. I'm just doing this at random. I'm just letting my intuition guide me. Okay, don't ignore that one. That if we break that line there, just notice this. If we break that line there, furniture store, because we had this description of furniture. Furniture store is not very surprising. So we always want to think of enjambment as just trying to surprise a little bit. Okay, let's think of this as a poem now. Okay, so imagine that this is a line, this is a line, this is a line, and I'll just read this as a poem just to kind of show you how this works. This is actually something that you can try with prose. Don't do this and then try to say that it's your poem. That's plagiarism. But this is something you can do even in your own work as an exercise if you find that you think it's useful. The accumulation of consecutive rooms in his memory now resembled those displays of grouped elbow chairs on show, and beds, and lamps and Ingelbrooks, which, ignoring all space-time distinctions, commingle in the soft light of a furniture store, beyond which it snows, and the dusk deepens, and nobody really loves anybody. You see how this right here is the major enjambment of that new poem that we were writing, okay? Just by cutting up Nabokov's original. Because from all this gathered information, you could never predict that this line is going to lead to this line. You couldn't predict it. That's a very strong enjambment, okay? And like I said, I just do this kind of out of intuition because I've been doing it for so long. But one thing you can try doing as you're writing, set up, say, for example, you write a poem and you're revising it. Well, maybe in your revision, you're going to put 5 words, no matter what, in each line. Or in another revision, you're only going to put 3 or 4. Or you're going to arrange your stanza in groups of 3 or 4 or 5, whatever, it doesn't matter. So you're constantly kind of restructuring the poem until it feels like you couldn't remove a line without destroying it. What you'll see in workshop very often is that if I take a stanza, let's say we have 3 stanzas in your poem, okay? If I take a stanza here and I move it to the end and it doesn't destroy the poem's meaning or what it seems to be saying, that means that you need to rework the structure. If I can take a couple of lines out of your poem and move them anywhere else in the poem, that means that those lines are probably not doing much, okay? So this is what I mean, that breaking the line, or actually having the line and sentence kind of in conversation, because this is all one sentence. Now, I would defy you, in a sense, to pick out any line out of the way I've broken this and move it anywhere else in the poem. You can't do it, okay? It wouldn't make sense. It would also kind of destroy the progression of the images and the way the poem is moving, okay? So that just shows very careful construction of language, even in the prose, that we can actually demonstrate it in poetic form, okay? So that's just a really quick little discussion of image and how prose writers use sound and how you can go into other writers' work and kind of chop into it and see what you get out of it. See if you pull something interesting from it, because as we'll see with the erasure, this is actually a legal technique so long as you cut most of what's going on. So I'll come back to this idea of the erasure here in a while and do another lecture on that. It's a very easy way to generate a first draft. So thank you.